Bart, you're here.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm advancing my technology skill sets here.
Thank you, Estelle, for your support on Zoom. Bart, great job. We are only getting stronger, my friend.
Amen. Amen. All right. Well, it's good to be back. It's good to see you tonight.
It is so nice to be here with you, Bart. We got some awesome questions from our crew coming in tonight. I'm pretty pumped to hear your answers.
Nice. And I'll start again. We're ready to rock and roll here. Is that right?
We are ready to rock and roll, Bart.
Well, first, let me just welcome everyone once again and say thanks for tuning into the Health Made Simple show. We appreciate having you here, and we appreciate you, just keep spreading out, keep spreading love here. The goal, and we'll do our best tonight with our questions and our answers. The questions that we're getting, the answers hopefully that I'll give are going to keep it simple. That's health is simple. We were designed to be healthy. Or literally everything in our body is designed to move us to be healthy, to be fit, to be strong. And if we can get out of the way and understand a little bit, and that's the idea of this show, to help just keep making health simple. All right. So thank you for being here. Appreciate you. I'm going to start off tonight with a little clinical insight. And if you're new to the show, the clinical insights, real simple. These are insights I have during the day while I'm in clinic. And I said, man, this would probably be good, something for me to share with everybody. So tonight is, instead of a very specific conversation that I had with one client or one patient, it was actually a topic that continued to come up through the entire course of the day. And today seemed a little bit more than usual of how frequent this came up. And the topic is flexibility on being tight. Very, very interesting. And here's what I want to kind of have a conversation about and explain to everyone. This is the clinical insight. Listen, no doubt that stretching is not comfortable. It's not fun. It very rarely is, until somehow in our minds we attach the work to enjoyment. And that happens for a lot of us, for a lot of things that we do. We may flex a discipline with our nutrition. We may flex discipline in the gym. We go work on weights. Maybe you're a runner and at some point you figured out how to enjoy the run. But I promise you, all of those things in the beginning were actually difficult and they were uncomfortable to do. And I will say this about range of motion flexibility. It is one of the most predictable and very, very important when it comes to predicting someone's future health. So for me as a practitioner, it is an easy benchmark for me to predict what's going on. And I've said that before, and people say, what do you mean by predictable? And this is what I mean. If you're getting tighter and tighter, I know that it's a strong likelihood, if you stay active, you're going to end up with a rotator cuff issue, a spinal issue, knee issues, elbow issues, wrist issues, shoulder issues. They're on their way. As you get tighter and tighter, the likelihood of you injuring yourself becomes more frequent. I know this in my personal life. I've shared here in Health Made Simple show that years ago, I had to stop doing jiu-jitsu. I had to stop doing my martial arts. And the reason being, I was getting tighter and tighter. My body was breaking down more and more. And it was at that time that I've kind of committed myself to being a yogi. I didn't want to. I didn't think it was sexy. I didn't think it was cool for a rugby player to be doing yoga. Yet I made that transition, and it was one of the bigger aha moments in my life when it comes to how important range of motion and flexibility are. So I want to go through a couple of things real quickly here. One, I hear often they say, Doc, I've always been tight. I was born this way. No, you were not. You're born like Gumby, and you die like rigor mortis. And this is a conversation I had multiple times today. Does not matter where you are, but if you are on that pendulum, you look and go like, way back there, I was flexible. And we'll say that was when you were younger, and where you are not, it's not flexible at all. Here's what I know. If over the next 5 years, you work on your flexibility, on your range of motion, you'll be more flexible than you are today, which means that you are anti-aging. And I will also tell you, here's the other challenge with this. Range of motion, the ability to move, is a very perishable component of our health. I don't think it's talked about enough. I don't think that it's valued enough. We value things like our weight and how we look and those other components. But the ability to move is one of the greatest gifts that we'll ever have. And I know that for certain because the moment we lose the ability to move, and I'm a chiropractor, I see a lot of people complain about the inability. My entire career has been about some degree or another of the inability to move. You lose your ability to move, whether it's out of your bed, on the rugby field, in a dance class, whatever it may be. You lose that ability, and all of a sudden life changes. So that being said, a couple things. One, I think in a weird way, I think it would be okay to have a healthy fear of not being able to move properly down the road. When I say healthy fear, because I'm not a big fan of fear, but healthy fear means that you use your fear to take action. And tonight, maybe what you would do this, so almost like a little gift for our listeners. All day today, I was then sending emails out for people. I wasn't doing it, but my team was. I was having our team send out emails of our spinal flow and how easy this is, and something to start every day with 2 to 3 minutes. Remember that fact that I tell you that range of motion and the ability to move is perishable. If you don't move it, you lose it. And that's real. It's real as it gets. And I've never had someone really complain about age until one of two things happens. It's really this. They can't move. They try to move like they used to, and it hurts. So it hurts when they move. That's the only time people complain about being old. So if you can move easy, life gets easy. So
Definitely, yes. Yeah, go ahead.
So I said, if you can win, I'm going to have you put the spinal range of the spinal flow video that we have. And my last comment on that is this. Listen, it's different than all of our other exercises. So if you go running and you start, like you want to get in fit again and you start exercising, you go out for a mile run, it's very measurable. Right? You couldn't do a mile last week and do a mile this week. And that really works good for our brain. So we get to go, okay, I can run a mile now. And it's very measurable. In the weight room, you might say, well, I can curl 25 pounds. And then 3 months later, you can curl 30 pounds, very measurable. But your range of motion, it's not as measurable. So oftentimes it's harder for us to wrap our brains around. Yet I will tell you, moving forward, if you are currently not engaged in some type of practice of increasing your flexibility, you're getting older as the day goes.
So what I'm hearing you say, Bart, is it's never too late to start to work on your range of motion and flexibility. Is that right?
100%. And that's the beauty in that. So I see people defy that component of age all the time. So many people say, well, I'm getting old, therefore I can't move. Then therefore there are many thousands, literally millions of people defying age because they're starting to move better because they're taking time, energy, and efforts to get the range of motion. Yoga and Pilates and stretching and exercise, all of these different things, but being very specific about it. And in fact, to get the whole body to work in unison in flexibility, most likely you're going to want to get involved in some type of a yoga class. And because there's so many varieties, there's a yoga class out there for everybody.
And then when we talk about the spinal flow, Bart, about how much time does it take to move through those exercises?
2 to 3 minutes. And the spinal flow is borderline genius. Now, granted, I did make it myself, so I guess I'm patting myself on the back. The reason it's genius, because I took a perspective of not necessarily, a yogi or an athlete, but from a chiropractor's perspective, an expert in spinal mechanics, in understanding that your spine is your lifeline. If you can take care of your spine, everything else has a better opportunity to thrive. Yet if your spine, which houses your entire spinal cord and spinal nerves, which control and coordinate every single function in the human body, if those are operating at an optimal level for wherever and whoever you are, you got a better shot at everything. Flips over too. If they're not operating well and they are congested and they're bound up and they're stuck together and they're all arthritic, we got disc issues, we got challenges ahead.
Do you find, Bart, that when we are working a little bit on our physical flexibility, does that sometimes reflect in our other flexibilities?
Yeah, I think there's a definite correlation between rigid body, rigid mind. I think they go hand in hand, because in order to keep your body flexible, you have to be dynamic through life, because what you used to do won't work in the future. And to be healthy, to be fit, to stay strong with the new version of you, which is the one you wake up tomorrow, you're going to have to continue to be dynamic. And if you're not, meaning you're rigid in your ways, your body will be rigid as well.
Bart, do you now think that yoga is cool?
Yeah. Heck yeah. I think
Me
it's all.
too.
Yeah. So I think yoga is cool. And I love my martial arts now and I'm so grateful that that gives me the opportunity to do those things that I love so much.
Yeah, it's so cool how it opens up the paths of everything that you're pursuing anyway. It just makes everything a little bit more fluid.
Yeah. And then, we can go on and on, but then the community that gets involved in it, the energy that we feel at the end of the day, the internalizing that takes place on a yoga mat, the challenges we face on a yoga mat, the breathing, all of that comes together, which is just pretty awesome.
What is it that you say, Bart? You don't see a lot of fights outside of yoga studios?
Yeah, you really don't. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen any fist fights after a yoga class.
Maybe some other activities, but not yoga classes. Bring
Not
people together.
right.
So awesome, Bart. All right, so should we dive into our questions for this
Yeah, let's
evening?
dive in. We've got a couple great questions, and these are really, really common questions. So I think they'll be serving to everybody.
Fantastic. Thanks to our audience for submitting these. All right, first up, Bart, my doctor says my blood pressure is higher this year than last and wants me to go on blood pressure medication. I'd prefer not to. Are there any natural solutions?
Yes, and thanks for asking this question. I get this type of question on a daily basis. So let's do this. I'm going to make this as absolute simple as I can, and I think this will apply to probably 85 to 95% of all the people out there who have been diagnosed with high blood pressure, and this could be a simple fix for you. Of course, here's my disclaimer. I'm not trying to diagnose or cure anything from this position. I'm just giving you information about your health that you can take action on. All right, with that being said, let's first just kind of break down and understand in a very simple way what is high blood pressure. So high blood pressure is measured through our arteries and veins, which are, so your arteries are coming out of your heart and they're carrying oxygen. So they're carrying oxygen. Your heart is pumping and it's pumping oxygen through arteries to the rest of your body. I'm messing this up. They're sending oxygen through your arteries to your whole body. All right, so that's the idea of an artery. And the veins bring them back. So once the oxygen gets to the body part, the veins bring them back into the heart. So that's the fundamental system. That's what we're measuring. When we measure blood pressure, we're measuring those arteries and veins. So, and what's really fascinating, let's just say this guy right here, you can kind of maybe see it if you're watching this. This is a vein. What's the difference between a vein and an artery? The ones you see in your body, so you go a little vascular, the ones that you see, those are all veins. So the body's so incredibly and fascinatingly intelligent. There's such an inborn, innate wisdom in the body that the veins, if you cut a vein, it's kind of no big deal because it's going to again close itself up and it doesn't have all your oxygen in it. So you're going to be perfectly fine. If you cut an artery that's being directly pumped from the heart, it'll be a gusher. It'll be blowing blood out, and you're going to get in trouble in a short period of time. The wisdom of the body, and I'm throwing this in, that's nothing to do with high blood pressure. The wisdom of the body, this innate wisdom that we all have, very intelligent, it buries those arteries a little bit deeper, so you're less likely to cut them by accident. All right, sidetracked, and let's get back to this. All right, so here's the thing. In the event that the arterial wall is constricted, that's where we're measuring that pressure. And the more pressure is on the arterial wall, the higher the blood pressure is. Here's what's fascinating about it. So your arteries and your veins they both have what's called smooth muscle, very much like the other muscles in your body, but they're involuntary. So I can't tell my arteries and veins to constrict, different than my bicep. I can tell that muscle to do it. So those are going to be regulated by other systems in my body, my endocrine system, my adrenal glands, etc. So this is what happens. To constrict an artery or a vein, your body uses a very specific nutrient. This is how simple this is, folks. Your body uses a nutrient called calcium. And calcium is the single most abundant nutrient in the body. Virtually impossible to run out of calcium. Quite frankly, there's so much of it in our body. And if you're running out, the body can leach it out of the bones to make sure you have enough circulating through your body. So that being said, vasoconstriction is caused by calcium. To vasodilate, we need another mineral called magnesium. If we run out of magnesium, if we become magnesium deficient, we lose the ability to vasodilate, to open up those arteries and veins. Most of the pressure is going to happen in the artery where the oxygen is flowing through, and the veins to some degree. It's not as significant amount of smooth muscle in the vein. Most of it is in the artery. So in the event we become deficient in magnesium, now all of a sudden we have a situation that we have vasoconstriction, but we can't get it to relax. So as many people know that magnesium is a yin mineral. It's a relaxation mineral. That's the one that helps us sleep and it helps us poop. So across the board, this is how simple it is. So this for this individual, if you're thinking about blood pressure, just think about this. Do you have a deficiency in magnesium? Have you had that conversation? Even if you haven't, or maybe you think it's good, and listen, lab work is not really accurate when it comes to magnesium. So just because it's circulating in the blood doesn't mean it's in the tissue. So what we want to do with this is just experiment because it's gentle and it's safe. If you're getting diagnosed with high blood pressure, you think it's on the rise, first steps first, increase your magnesium. That's a no-brainer. 300 to 400 milligrams before you go to bed at night. There's different types, and I can cover those if we want. But 300 to 400 milligrams at night. If the only way you might say, "Oh, this is too much for me," is in the event that in the morning your stool is too loose, then back off like a capsule or maybe 100 milligrams or so. But that by itself right there is one of the simplest ways that we were able to cross the board. We would probably, I don't know how many that we could predict, but we would literally take thousands, if not millions of people off of blood pressure medications in a very short period of time. Most people are deficient.
Art, where else can we find magnesium?
So there's our diet, which is fantastic. Dark leafy greens, fantastic. Nuts and seeds, which means that we have to have a pretty healthy diet. Because the flip side of that, Whip, is that the flip side of the flip side of the dark leafy greens and seeds in a nice natural diet would be that in the event that we have too much sugar or alcohol, which are probably the number one ways that we deplete magnesium in the body. So real quickly, sugar, you actually need magnesium to be able to metabolize sugar properly. And yeah, so this gives a little deeper on, and we won't dive into that deep tonight, but listen, if you become magnesium deficient, you also need magnesium for insulin to work properly. So if you're magnesium deficient, this is how deep this goes. Just a simple, like, you probably go on your Instagram and or Facebook today, and there'll probably be like 10 different ads on a daily basis of someone talking about the importance of magnesium and how deficient people are. And it's true. It's one of the simpler things that fixes a lot of things. Magnesium is responsible for over 300 different biochemical enzymatic reactions within the body. One of them being its reaction with insulin. If you don't have enough magnesium, you can start to develop something called insulin resistance. And that insulin resistance means you become a fat storing machine. So it changes everything. Where sugar, we know, is a big depleter of magnesium, and the other is alcohol. The bummer about the alcohol is a little different mechanism. Of course, there's some sugar there, but it inhibits the absorption of magnesium. So
that means like you can be taking in lots of leafy green vegetables, you've got your like supplementation going, but it's not sticking around.
Precisely. That's it. And that's because often, think about how alcohol is used most frequently in our world, right? At least in our country. You might eat a dinner, you might have a nice healthy dinner, maybe have some, grilled chicken and some broccoli and some salad or something. And then later in the night, you have a glass of wine or two. Now your alcohol inhibits the absorption of your nutrients, specifically magnesium. So therefore, now the way that the body responds to that, remember, there's this innate wisdom. There's a depletion of minerals and vitamins. Your body has this wisdom that says, I need vitamins and minerals to function. My tissues, my organs, my glands, everyone needs these minerals. So I'm going to increase the circulation. How do I do that? Increase the pressure of the arteries. So now we have this double whammy, not enough magnesium to vasodilation and a need to get more nutrients through the body.
So magnesium.
So, yeah, I'll finish up just on that tail end of that question of in the event that someone has been diagnosed with high blood pressure. First, I would say this, make sure I would say this, get with your functional medicine doctor, someone who's going to look for the root cause of this. And this is really where this needs to go. And also recognize that if blood pressure is going up, it's not likely that it's because you inherited it, that there's a good chance that your lifestyle or deficiency, something as simple as magnesium deficiency, and there are different types. There's magnesium lactates out there, there's magnesium citrate and glycinate, and they're all just different versions of how to facilitate getting magnesium into the body. So a lot of good ones in our clinic. We typically use magnesium like lactate, very easy on the body, kind of a blend to get into the body and cross the blood-brain barrier. So that's a really good option. Make sure you're taking or start taking, if you're not, some magnesium. Maybe you can wean down on the things that are diminishing it. And I would also say this: there is such thing as white coat syndrome, which means when you go to the doctor, your blood pressure often goes up. It's not uncommon. We're getting nervous. We have a little test, and in that moment, we have a little bit of heightened, anxiousness. So I would suggest that you get a blood pressure cuff at home, and you practice. You take it at least 3 times each time that you're going to do it, and in between, you take a couple of deep breaths with really slow exhales. I think most people will be fascinated by how quickly they can drop their blood pressure by doing long, slow exhales in literally a minute or 2. So sorry about the interruption there, folks. Hopefully we'll be able to kind of paste these two together and you get the first half of that as well.
Awesome, Bart. All right, so that is a great intro to magnesium and how it relates to blood pressure. Shall we go into our second question?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. I am so confused about carbs, quote unquote. Some say I need them for exercise, which does seem to help. Others say get rid of them to lose weight. Please help make this simple. What a great question, Bart.
Yeah, great question. This comes up a lot, and a lot of times I think it also doesn't come up because people are just flat out confused. And there's a lot of information, and I understand where the confusion comes, and I'll do my best to, again, make this as simple as can be. So here's the fact. There was 2 very interesting things about the question right there. One was talking about exercise and probably function and performance, like do the carbs help me perform while I exercise? And the other was about weight loss. And those are 2 separate things. So I'm going to address those both, and therefore you can choose how you want to utilize or not utilize carbohydrates. So carbohydrates, let's first define that when I speak about carbohydrates, I'm still talking about all the ones that come from God's garden. I'm still not talking about bread and bagels and pasta and muffins and crackers and chips. At no point do I think those carbohydrates are effective and or beneficial for the human body. So we're going to scratch all of those, but the carbohydrates that we are talking about might be a sweet potato. It might be broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale. It might be a salad. It might be spinach. It might be all of those things. It might be some nuts. It might be anything in those categories where it still comes from God's garden. All right. With that being said, can carbohydrates, taking some extra carbohydrates, or maybe like a smoothie or protein drink before your exercise, could it increase your ability to get after your exercise on a short-term basis? The answer is yes. Carbohydrates are a great fuel source for energy. Now here comes the and part of this. Absolutely. Now they are a great fuel source for energy. Now, the challenge here is this: in the event that you have a goal of losing weight, and often that is one of the questions that I get, Doc, how can I lose weight? I am an advocate of going into a low carb type of situation or low carb diet. Here's a couple, I'll give you a couple like simple facts to kind of wrap up range around. In the event that you are using carbohydrates, like a pre-workout drink, okay, and you take something like that and you go to the gym and you're all jazzed up, you have plenty of carbohydrates and or calories that you have available to you. When you're exercising, you're going to burn the very calories you just put into your body. And if you run out of them, you hit the wall. Now, at that time, if you eat more, you'll have more energy. But if you do not, you will not have more energy and you will essentially crash. So that's not so good when it comes to your exercise. Our liver, just give you a reference here, our liver can basically hold at any given time, we're going to say roughly about 500 calories, about 100 grams of glycogen, 120 grams, which think of that as sugar or carbohydrates. And the musculoskeletal system can hold about 1,500 calories, maybe about 500 grams of glycogen or sugar. And there's a reason I'm sharing this. So we'll call that 2,000 calories and or maybe 600 grams of carbohydrates. I'm simplifying this. I know there's going to be some trainers out there who are like, no, it doesn't work that way. It does work this way. The numbers might be a little skewed. If we have all of those available for us, they are stored in our body as glycogen. Glycogen is another source of sugar. If we go to exercise and we haven't brought any food in, we start to use up those calories. If we use up those calories and become depleted in them, we then move on to burning fat as a caloric source. So fat has tremendous amount of calories, tremendous amount of energy available, but we have to go to the easy burning fuel first. So if you have a lot of carbohydrates in your diet or enough to sustain the storage in your liver and your muscles, you never get to the fat. So when you go on a lower carb diet, you start depleting the resources because you're just walking around, you're going to burn 1,000 calories a day, 2,000 calories a day, just doing anything. And if you are on a low carb diet, let's just say you're going for under 50 grams a day, you're going to start to deplete your storage. Once you deplete your storage and you're exercising, quickly you get to a deficit. And when you get to a deficit, you start burning fat for fuel, which is a pretty cool thing because then you're burning ketones. You make something called ketones, which is a very efficient fuel source for the body. And I'm going to back this up and say this. Trying to do this all the time and always being in a deficiency or having a deficit of caloric intake will not always work, right? So we have to bring in fuels. But if we bring in the fats and the proteins and we're constantly fueling our body, there's still calories, but we make it a little bit harder for our body to burn those up. And it has to be a little bit more what we call metabolic flexible. Absolutely fantastic. So to the person asking this question, carbohydrates are good. Good carbohydrates are healthy for us. I think next week or the following week, we're going to do an entire show on just women and fasting because that will help, I think, clear up a lot to do with when women should or should not have carbohydrates. There's a time. So for example, I'll give a little precursor of what we'll talk about. When after ovulation, about 7-10 days after ovulation, and progesterone levels are supposed to rise, progesterone to rise needs carbohydrates. If a woman stays in a very low carbohydrate month after month after month, guys can do it all day long. Women do it, they will create a hormone imbalance and it'll backfire on them. So we'll do a deep dive on that, but letting this message for tonight. One, it's always clean carbs. So there's never an excuse or never a reason. Because a lot of times people mix when most people, I think, when they think of carbs, they're thinking bread, right? Is that safe to say? Most time people
think so. Maybe things from like a pastry case. Yes, the bread aisle. I think we think of like the white fluffy stuff.
Yes. So when I speak of carbs, I'm absolutely not speaking of those. I still think they have zero value for the human body. Most of the time, they're going to be detrimental, meaning that they create inflammation, they have phytic acid, they steal nutrients, all that kind of stuff. But all the other carbs can be super highly valuable. The other thing I would say to this is if you are using carbohydrate prior to exercise, I encourage you to experiment not doing it. Experiment for a month of no food before exercise and see how your body responds. In the beginning, I'll agree, in the first couple minutes of the workout, might be a little harder to get the engine running. But once you do, it's going to be a fine-tuned machine. And you will be able to do more fat burning if that's one of your goals, and you'll have plenty of energy. Because remember, your fat cells have way more calories in them than do any other type of, whether it be a protein and or carbohydrate. So your fat cell has more calories than anything to be available for a fuel source. So give yourself an opportunity to maybe go exercise without those carbohydrate preemptive drinks and foods. The other part is this: if you don't, and this is what I've just seen over all these years, if you're using carbohydrates for your fuel source for your gym, guess where else you're using it? Everywhere. Yeah. So later in the day, when you're a little bit tired, you go for carbohydrates. And there's no science behind this other than this is exactly what I've seen for the last 26 years. So,
and you mean literally, Bart, like you're just reaching for them. They're just like the readily available thing.
100%, because you did it earlier in the day for your exercise. You wanted to jazz up. So you took in carbohydrates to jazz you up. And basically, when I say jazz up, you increase your blood sugar really quick. So later in the day, when you hit a little bit of lull, instead of your body digging down a little bit and flexing some of its metabolic flexibility and really increasing metabolic activity, burn up some fat for fuel, you reach for another carbohydrate because that's the pattern. That's the easiest that you're accustomed to.
So if there's a listener out there, Bart, who has some goals in regards to maybe like burning fat for fuel or seeing like where carbohydrates best fit into their diet, even about like blood pressure, what you were mentioning earlier, would they be able to work with you one-on-one?
100%. It's easy. We can do it like this, which is a Zoom call. They can just call the office and schedule. And I'll tell you, more often than not, especially if these things are coming up in question, having the proper strategy is half the battle. And I know this firsthand. That's kind of how this podcast was born, through so many people having so much confusion. I'm absolutely an advocate and fan of all of the opportunities that we have through Google and Facebook and all social medias. And I also do understand how for some people it can be confusing. You watch one thing and it says, you can eat all the carbs you want. And I'm always scratching my head saying, and then what? Or they say you can't eat any carbohydrates if you want to lose weight. And there's having a strategy and also knowing this. Here's the other thing that's real true, and it's factual, that each one of us is very, very different, and we have very different histories. So what we've done with our bodies and our lives, physically, mentally, chemically, spiritually, all of those play a role in where we're headed at.
Beautiful, Bart. Well, that will do it tonight for our question and answer here at the Health Made Simple show, guys. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Keep doing your thing. Keep sharing out. Keep spreading love. Appreciate that you're here tonight. And we will see you again here same time next week.